Good morning and welcome to the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for September 22nd, 2022. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda today, there are speaker request forms on the table along the left wall. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the staff seated on the left of the dais. This time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience, which I don't see any, has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. Items 1 and 2 have been placed on the consent calendar today and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision with the exception of the following item. Item 2, 22 PD 045. The Rapid City Planning Commission's action on this item is final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Would staff like us to remove 1 or 2 for separate consideration? Anybody on the Planning Commission want to remove 1 or 2? Vince? No? Oh. And anybody sneaking in the audience that wants to remove 1 or 2 for separate consideration? The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar, items 1 and 2, in accordance with staff's recommendation. All right. Vince made the motion to approve. Eric Heikus seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, discussion items. Vicki?
Just a reminder that at your next meeting, it is election of officers. Usually that's done at the end of the meeting. So just as a reminder, your chair currently is Eric Braun, your vice chair was Rachel Caesar, and Karen Bullman is the secretary. When Rachel stepped down, the decision was made that since elections were coming up, we just leave that vacant until it was election time. So I'll be thinking about it. If it's something that you want to do, let your colleagues know. We've got a great team that's been holding down the fort, but if you are interested, if it's something you want to try, let the group know for consideration. And again, that will be done at the end of next meeting. On our list also is to let you know that this was a light agenda and it came at the right time. Yesterday was Marlo's last day and it's kind of bittersweet in our office. She was just a pistol, you know, she was one that came in every day, had an absolutely great attitude and just moved so much work across her desk. But she's going on to such an opportunity as the Director of Planning for Spearfish that we certainly couldn't slight her. I was trying to convince her to stay. She lives in Belle Fourche, and I realized that unless we could move Rapid City closer to Belle Fourche, she was going to pick that Spearfish job over this job. So we do have a tentative planner that will be joining our team. We've offered to him with the consideration that this has got to be the right fit for him as well. He's coming to town on Friday. He's going to shadow Tanner. We'll do a drive around town. Just let him get a feel to make sure that this is the right community and the right work environment for him. Just as a reminder, you cannot get a planning degree in the state of South Dakota. So many of our planners come from other states, or in Tanner's case, other countries, and then we've got to do what we can to make this the best working environment possible for retention of employment. We typically hire planners right out of college. They get experience here. Some communities, you only do zoning, or you only do conditional use permits, or you only do building permits. And here, when you're a planner, you do everything. And so it makes for a really good resume. And unfortunately, we do have a high turnover rate because we cannot competitively compete with some of the salaries that other communities offer. So we're going at this a little differently. We're making sure that this is right for the individual as well. And you're going to be seeing some ordinance amendments in the near future to look at what we can do. There's so much of what our planners do that is just pushing paperwork. Things never get denied, but it always requires a process. It's frustrating for the developers, it's frustrating for contractors, definitely frustrating for property owners, but it's especially frustrating for the planners. It's just a heavy, heavy amount of paperwork. And Karen, I'll rely heavily on you as someone who sat in a planner's seat to know that a lot of what we do, the process is cumbersome. One of the items that we want to talk to you about today is an upcoming ordinance amendment that you will be seeing. As you may have noticed in many of the planned developments for apartments of late, in almost every instance you're reviewing an exception to height. It has become a standard design change that apartment builders want to put a little higher ceiling on these apartments. That goes to quality of life. We support this. We want to see those higher ceilings. And in doing so, that 35-foot limit in an apartment development or any zoning that would allow that requires an exception. Some apartments don't require a planned development. The planner still has to do an administrative exception. When it comes to you, they still have to review it as a part of the planned development. In no instance has that exception been denied, except for one, which was in relationship to an apartment development on Fox Drive out on Mount Rushmore Road. There was a huge pushback, and in that instance, they wanted to increase it by a full story. So this amendment to go from 35 feet to 40 feet still would limit it to 3 stories. It just allows for some flexibility of height and design that leads to quality of life. And we see this in other communities as well, as we note that developers that are coming here for these apartment projects, they're bringing a design plan that they've used in other communities. And these communities have had to address this issue as well. So we hope that we garnish your support when we bring that one forward. If you've got any comments, things that you think that we should be reviewing as a part of that, please share with us. But to us, it really goes to the number of exceptions that have been requested. Definitely support a design change, which leads to quality of life. They are never denied, except for the one instance where they wanted to go the full story. So is this something that you could get behind? Do you see issues with it? We'd be interested in hearing some thoughts.
All right, Eric Hikas has a light up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I wanted to talk about was something else, so I'll wait for us to finish this conversation.
And certainly if anyone has any comments, just reach out to me and we can be sure that we're addressing them as we're bringing that project forward. The last thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned it at the last meeting, I have locked down from the city council members a plan for providing Planning 101 training. If you would like to join us, show of hands. Hands again. So Eric, Vince.
When are you
Pardon? We'll do a doodle poll and send out to see how many. We have to capture the council members, but we'll try to make sure as many of you can join them as possible. And Kelly, did you want to join us? Okay. Oh, both mics. Very good. Okay. We'll probably do it over lunch one day so that it doesn't interfere with your day least amount possible. So, and maybe we'll even do it in this room if we have enough of you that attend. But this is great. Thank you. And it really does just get behind the principles of planning, and it kind of leads to some of the authority that you have and don't have. And it'll be good just to have it. Karen doesn't need to come. She used to provide the training in some instances, so I think she's covered. And for those of you who have sat up there a long time, a lot of this will be redundant, but it'll be a good reminder. And you'll get a free lunch out of the deal. So with that, if any of you have any items, please share with us.
All right, we'll go back to Eric Hikas.
I was hoping for a light, oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was hoping for a light agenda because I wanted to share about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was in Oslo. I went to Norway for
Where? Eric?
Oslo, the capital of Norway. And I was just blown away by the progressive planning that I witnessed in a large Scandinavian city. I think we're doing some really cool things in Rapid City, but boy, did I see some cool things in Oslo. The way that they approached energized space, there was always lots of places to do things. So like large tracts of housing usually had a central piazza, had a coffee or pizza place. So they also had a small grocery just about everywhere. So it was very pedestrian driven. The green infrastructure in Oslo just blew my mind. Like everything drained into a little ditch, which drained into a little basin, which shed water into a park, which did it all on the surface of the ground brilliantly. The other thing I noticed was massive changes to infrastructure all the time. Big road projects, large buildings, large construction happening constantly. And even like what looked like a pretty good road was being torn up to put a better road in a lot of times. You know, I think they were champions of that. So, and I think because of that, they had a very healthy economy. I mean, with all that happening. So I didn't get any great pictures, but I got a lot of pictures. And if you want, I could show them if anyone would be interested. And I'd love to share what I saw. I also saw some mind-blowing architecture when I was there. I mean, like their new opera house in Oslo actually is like a big stone weir, and it comes down into the sea, right? And you can actually walk down this thing, you know, and touch the sea right in front of the ocean, right by the beach where the opera house was. You know what I mean? It's like there's like invisible lines between placemaking. So I was just like, wow. I mean, I love Rapid City, but boy, it was pretty fun to see. Wait, another city does things. So I just wanted to share that.
Mr. Chair.
Vicki?
So just as a reminder, the internet is fantastic. Tanner pulled it up, and they've got tourist incentivized pictures of that community that you can look at, and the Opera House is really awesome. So yeah, take a look at it. It is fantastic. I just wanted to note that in 1935, when Rapid City first created their zoning ordinance, we didn't have the number of vehicles. Many families, if they were lucky, they had one vehicle. And so our concept of land planning was similar to that. And hence the district neighborhood commercial was a component throughout the community. So that within every residential area, you had neighborhood commercial that could be right next door. And over the course of time, with improved transportation, with people not thinking anything about driving across town to get a product, those areas have become far more stagnant. Some of them have transitioned into residential, but it is something that, as we look at the environment and we look at trying to increase opportunities for more pedestrian travel instead of vehicular travel, we promote, we encourage, and when we sit down with developers, we're looking at where's the groceries to this development? Where are working opportunities so that people can live close to where they're going to work? Where do they get their services? And then ensuring that there is appropriate zoning in the area so that you can serve the needs of those living there. So I think that we transitioned away from that, and now with the next generation coming along, we're seeing people desiring that again. They want to go for the stroll with the family in the evening and have that ice cream cone and be able to pick up some groceries and walk back home instead of always getting in the vehicle or having to stop at a big market someplace on the way home and eat up valuable time from the family. So I'm hopeful. We certainly have the tools in the toolbox to support that type of design. So it's a great comment. And again, surprising that in 35 we were as progressive as we were.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, one of the things that I want to talk about the ceiling height for a second, because as we said in the last meeting, or as I said in the last meeting, that it was one of the toughest things that I had to do, and I've seen it a couple of times where someone buys a home and then they put up a apartment complex next to it. But the quality of life is extremely important. Having lived in apartments almost all my life before I got here and owned my first home, actually, it's the kind of thing that also with the rising price of housing, it's another thing that's very important. If we're going to keep down housing prices, one of the options is to build in the urban areas as opposed to sprawl. It does help with fire, and it does help with law enforcement, safety and security. So, as I'm looking at it today and as you presented it, I think it's a great idea. And I know it's one less thing that we would have to worry about. It's more on the staff, but I think it's a great idea.
Chair? So we're taking this as a baby step, but you're going to see several ordinance amendments coming forward that we are looking at because of the concern of sprawl. This city is growing, and there's great things about growth, but because of some of our restrictions, it really lends itself to forced sprawl. As an example, in general commercial, the maximum ceiling or the maximum height is 45 feet, 4 stories, 45 feet. Many years ago, I sat in this room with Planning Commission and council members arguing that we should raise that to 60 feet. And it was flat denied, with the idea that we are a community that loves our views and we don't want any encroachment or hindrance of those to be able to see the hills. Well, depending upon what elevation you're looking at, that building can, whether it's 1 story or 4 stories. And it's a moment in time of hindrance. We've got to increase that height. We saw a proposal from a developer that wanted to bring forward a 10-story structure along Mount Rushmore Road and was requesting it as an exception. And this was out by Catron Boulevard. Probably a sensitive area to introduce such an increase. But at the end of the day, at a minimum, our height in general commercial should allow for 7-story buildings. We're at that time. Rapid City is growing. If we allow this, then many of our commercial development would have apartments above them. But to cost flow that out, they've got to get more units within that structure. And to do so, we've got to increase that height. We'll do a lot of research on that, come in with some simulations of what that might look like. Our GIS program can give us some 3-dimensional assistance in looking at areas that general commercial would support that. But we've got to start thinking outside the box, or we're going to continue to see forced development expanding acreages out towards especially the north and the east of our community. And that's never the right fit. That linear foot of infrastructure, whether it's streets, water, or sewer, that's something that the city has to own and maintain once that development is locked down. And when you don't have the higher number of users on that same linear foot system, the taxpayers are picking up the difference. And some communities have grown to the extent of bankruptcy, where if all you're doing is single family and smaller apartment development, the tax revenue from that does not pay for the maintenance of those streets. So we need to get around this and get ahead of it. So thank you for that comment, Vince. You're going to see some big steps forward. Rapid City has always been a big town. We've grown to be a little city, and we need to do this right and preserve our open space to the greatest degree possible.
Thanks, Vicki. I would just add on the idea of maybe paperwork reduction more than anything. Look at oversized garages. We see a lot of those, and I think if we incentivize people who are interested in them to limit their access points and, you know, make it, get a few things essentially for the city for it being a permitted application versus a public meeting, could be a good thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that is on our to-do list. Just note we are down 4 planners right now, so, but you're absolutely right. And what we'll probably do is come forward with something that says, if you have a garage that up to whatever it happens to be, 2,000 square feet, whatever that next number is, it wasn't that long ago any garage over 1,000 square feet required a conditional use permit. And we do see so many of them. And in all cases, I do remember one that got appealed to council that did get denied over on the west side of town, but other than that, they always get approved. But they get approved with stipulations. They get approved with, you have to use the same approach, they have to be of the same building material and color as the existing single-family residence. So we can look at that to ensure that they're permitted if they meet this criteria. If they're not, if they don't meet that criteria, then and only then is it a conditional use. We're thinking along the same lines.
Excellent. Could have an effect on sprawl too, maybe a couple less storage units.
Exactly. Some
Guy can
people
dream.
would stay put if they could expand their garage space, but if they can't, then they're going to move to another area that allows them to have that additional square footage, because it is a percentage of the home or 1,500 square feet, whichever is greater.
Any other items from the commission, staff? If not, I'd look for a motion to adjourn. All right, Mike Galler made the motion to adjourn, and Vince seconded that motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
I won that.